The late evening sunlight streamed into Lucas and Vanessa's living room, casting a golden hue over the polished hardwood floor. The quiet hum of the suburban neighborhood outside was a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside Lucas's mind. For years, he had taken comfort in the routine of their lives together, the steady rhythm of their 12-year marriage. But today, something was different. Lucas stood motionless in the doorway of their home office, holding a sleek black smartphone that did not belong to him. His sharp grey eyes, usually so focused and intense, now brimmed with a quiet rage. It had been hidden well, tucked behind an outdated cookbook in the kitchen, a place he only happened upon while searching for a spare light bulb. The phone powered on with a soft vibration, revealing a screen filled with messages. Vanessa's name lit up at the top of the most recent conversation, but it wasn't addressed to him. Instead, the words were warm, intimate, and unmistakably meant for someone else. The recipient was labeled R, and Lucas didn't need to read far to piece together the truth. "Can't wait to see it tonight. It's getting harder to keep this from him." "What?" Lucas's chest tightened, his breath coming in short, measured bursts. The betrayal was visceral. Not just a rupture of their vows, but an attack on the foundation of trust he had so meticulously built. His loyalty, his sacrifices, his unwavering support. All dismissed with a few casual text exchanges. For a moment, Lucas considered storming into the next room and demanding answers. Vanessa was there, casually scrolling through her laptop as if her world wasn't about to implode. He could confront her now, but what would it accomplish? An impulsive argument? Tears? Excuses? Maybe a half-hearted confession? No. He needed more. He deserved the truth in its entirety, not the version Vanessa would spin to protect herself. Instead, he powered off the phone and slid it back into its hiding place, careful not to disturb anything around it. His movements were deliberate, almost surgical, as if performing an autopsy on their marriage. Evidence. That was what he needed now. Lucas retreated to their bedroom, where a quiet tension settled over him, like a second skin. This was no longer about anger or betrayal. It was about reclaiming his dignity, his control. He opened his laptop and began searching for ways to back up the messages from the phone. If Vanessa thought her secret life could remain hidden, she was about to discover just how wrong she was. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, its sound merging with the rhythm of Lucas's pulse. The house was quiet, almost serene, as Vanessa moved about her evening routine. Yet, within Lucas's mind, a storm raged. He wouldn't just confront her. He would unravel her lies meticulously, methodically, like the draftsman he once was, before switching careers. She wouldn't see it coming, not until the pieces of her carefully constructed double life lay exposed, one by one, under the harsh light of truth. Lucas's resolve grew sharper as the hours passed. He moved through their home with a steady calm, masking the inner chaos that churned beneath his composed exterior. Dinner that evening was as ordinary as ever. Vanessa sat across from him, her auburn hair catching the light of the kitchen pendant lamp, her radiant smile effortlessly charming. It was the same smile that had once captivated him, yet now it felt hollow, a mask concealing her betrayal. The second phone remained hidden, untouched, for now. Lucas knew he needed to gather more. Confrontation without preparation would only allow Vanessa room to manipulate the narrative. She was skilled at persuasion. He had admired that about her once. Now he saw it as a weapon she would wield against him if he wasn't careful. "Everything okay?" Vanessa asked, her tone light, almost casual. She reached for her wine glass, her delicate fingers betraying no sign of guilt or unease. Lucas forced a faint smile. "Just a long day," he replied, his voice steady, betraying none of his thoughts. His grey eyes lingered on her for a moment longer than usual, studying her movements, her expressions. She looked carefree, oblivious. It enraged him, but he swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat. That night, after Vanessa fell asleep, Lucas moved with practiced silence. Her breathing, slow and rhythmic, was the only sound in the room as he retrieved her phone from its usual spot on the nightstand. He had observed her habits closely over the past few days, noting how she always kept her main phone close, a constant accessory. He unlocked it using the passcode he'd learned from a glance, watching her fingers move across the screen one afternoon. Vanessa, confident in her ability to deceive, hadn't even thought to change it. Lucas scrolled through her messages and emails, but found nothing incriminating. Vanessa was careful, meticulous. If not for the second phone, Lucas might have doubted himself. Returning the phone, Lucas stared at the ceiling in the dim light of their bedroom. The betrayal was no longer a question, it was a fact. What he didn't know was how deep it ran. Was this a fleeting affair, or had Vanessa woven her lies so tightly into their lives that unearthing them would leave nothing but ruin? The following day, Lucas's plan began to take form. On his lunch break, he met with Emma, his younger sister. Emma had always been his confidant, her unwavering support a lifeline in difficult times. Over coffee, he laid out what he had discovered, showing her the initial texts he had backed up from the second phone. Emma's face hardened as she scrolled through the evidence. "She doesn't deserve you," she said, her voice laced with anger. "Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you." Lucas nodded, grateful for her support. But he wasn't ready to act yet. Not until he had gathered enough to leave Vanessa with no escape route. He had decided on one thing, though. This confrontation would be on his terms. Lucas spent the next few days piecing together her movements. He scanned credit card statements, cross-referenced her frequent work excuses with the logs of hotel reservations and gift purchases. Vanessa was careful, yes, but she had underestimated him. Each piece of evidence he uncovered added weight to the truth he would eventually lay at her feet. When Lucas finally reached for the second phone again, his heart was steady. He wasn't the man Vanessa thought she could deceive. He was more. And soon, she would know it too. Lucas's preparations began to bear fruit, each step uncovering new layers of Vanessa's betrayal. By now, the second phone had become a veritable goldmine of information. Every hidden message, every clandestine plan, was a thread in the web she had spun. Lucas didn't merely collect these fragments, he studied them, analyzed them. He wanted to understand the extent of her deceit, to ensure that when he acted, there would be no room for her lies to stand. One evening, as Vanessa hummed to herself in the shower, Lucas sat in their living room, scrolling through photos on the second phone. A candid snapshot caught his attention. Vanessa, wearing the same dress she'd worn on their anniversary dinner last month, standing too close to a man with an air of familiarity. The caption read, "Until next time." Ah. Rage flickered in Lucas's chest, but he didn't let it consume him. Instead, he traced the photograph's metadata. His technical knowledge, cultivated during years of methodical work, proved invaluable. The timestamp confirmed it wasn't from the night of their anniversary but a week later, when Vanessa claimed to be at an out-of-town conference. He cross-referenced it with a receipt she'd left on the counter, noticing the discrepancy in dates. Slowly, but surely, her alibi crumbled. Lucas knew he couldn't confront Vanessa alone. Her charm, her ability to twist words, would turn any confrontation into a murky haze of accusations and denials. He needed allies, not just for support, but to ensure that her betrayal would have lasting consequences. He began with Emma. Together, they devised a plan that was as methodical as it was devastating. Emma volunteered to reach out to mutual friends, subtly probing for any whispers of Vanessa's infidelity. Within days, she uncovered a mutual friend, Sophia, who had her own suspicions. Sophia hesitated at first, reluctant to get involved, but the evidence Lucas showed her erased any doubts. "I thought something was off," Sophia admitted during a late-night conversation. "She's been different, Lucas. But I didn't want to believe it." With Sophia's help, Lucas uncovered more. Vanessa had been meeting her lover, Ryan, under the guise of work events for months. Their meetings weren't just casual. They were intimate and carefully orchestrated, each one a calculated insult to the trust Lucas had placed in her. Lucas didn't stop there. Using financial records Vanessa hadn't thought to hide, he unearthed questionable transactions. Luxury gifts he'd never seen, dinners at restaurants far from their home, and hotel stays billed to Vanessa's personal credit card. Each revelation was a blow, not just to their marriage, but to the life he thought they'd built together. Yet Lucas refused to let bitterness consume him. This wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity. He needed the full picture, every detail of Vanessa's betrayal, not just for himself, but for the future he would reclaim. The groundwork was laid. With each step, Lucas tightened the net around Vanessa. She was still oblivious, laughing and smiling as if her world wasn't crumbling beneath her. But Lucas knew her time was running out. Soon the lies she had built her second life upon would collapse, and Lucas would be there to witness it, ready to walk away, his dignity intact. The day Lucas had been preparing for finally arrived. He had spent weeks collecting evidence, building a case so airtight that Vanessa wouldn't have a single word of defense. The second phone now sat locked in his desk drawer, its secrets catalogued in a neatly organized folder on his laptop. Financial records, timestamps, incriminating photos, and screenshots of explicit messages. All of it waited like silent witnesses to her betrayal. Lucas chose a quiet Saturday morning for the confrontation. He wanted Vanessa to feel the weight of what she had done without the distraction of work or social obligations. As the morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows, he poured 2 cups of coffee, setting them on the dining table. Vanessa appeared a few minutes later, her auburn hair still damp from the shower, her radiant smile as effortless as ever. "Morning," she said brightly, kissing him on the cheek. Lucas managed a neutral smile. "Sit down. We need to talk." The tone of his voice stopped her mid-motion. She hesitated but then sat across from him, her expression shifting from casual to wary. "What's this about?" she asked, reaching for her coffee. Lucas slid the folder across the table. "It's about this," he said quietly. Vanessa froze, her hand lingering just above the cup. She glanced at the folder but didn't open it. "What is this?" "Open it," Lucas said, his voice calm but firm. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the folder and pulled out the first document, a printed screenshot of her messages with Ryan. Her face paled. She flipped to the next page, then the next, each one revealing more of her lies. Perhaps that was why he had shown up. "Lucas, she stammered, her voice barely audible. He leaned forward, his grey eyes locking onto hers. "Save it. I don't want excuses. I want honesty. For once." Vanessa's mouth opened as if to protest, but no words came out. She set the folder down, her radiant facade crumbling. How did you, she began, but Lucas cut her off. "It doesn't matter how I found out," he said coldly. "What matters is what you've done. You lied to me, to our friends, to everyone who trusted you. And for what? Some fleeting thrill?" Tears welled in her eyes, but Lucas wasn't moved. He had rehearsed this moment too many times in his head to let emotions sway him now. "I loved you, Vanessa," he continued, his voice breaking just slightly. "I gave you everything I had, and this is how you repay me? By making me look like a fool?" "Lucas, please," she said, her voice trembling. "It wasn't like that." "No," he interrupted, his tone sharp. "It's exactly like that. I've seen the messages. I've seen the photos. I know about the hotels, the dinners, the lies. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." Vanessa buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. Lucas leaned back in his chair, the silence between them heavy and final. He had expected anger, denial, maybe even defiance, but her tears meant nothing to him now. This was her reckoning, and she would face it alone. Lucas rose from the dining table, leaving Vanessa slumped in her chair, her sobs muffled by trembling hands. For a brief moment, he stood silently, staring out the window into the backyard. It was where they'd once planted a garden together, laughing as they stumbled over rows of uneven soil. That life felt like a distant dream, obliterated by the revelations of the past weeks. He turned back to her, his tone measured, devoid of warmth. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. These are the divorce papers." He placed a neatly stapled stack of documents on the table beside the damning evidence he'd shown her. Vanessa's sobs stopped abruptly as she looked up, her tear-streaked face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You've already—" "Lucas, wait," she stammered, her voice breaking. "Can't we talk about this? I made a mistake, but—" "No, Vanessa!" His voice was quiet but resolute, cutting through her protests. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice, a series of choices. And now, you're going to face the consequences of them." Vanessa reached for his arm, her fingers trembling. "We've been together for so long. Please, Lucas, we can fix this. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes." Lucas stepped back, her touch burning like an open wound. "Anything?" he repeated bitterly. "You should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't enough for you. Before you lied again and again while looking me in the eyes." She flinched at the venom in his words, but didn't let go. "I was scared," she said desperately. "Scared of losing myself. Scared of becoming invisible. I didn't want to hurt you, Lucas, but I was. I was lost." "You weren't lost," he snapped, pulling away. "You were selfish, and you knew exactly what you were doing every step of the way," she said. The sound of her crying filled the room as Lucas turned to the doorway. He had no desire to see her tears or hear her excuses. He paused only long enough to grab a small box from the sideboard, a box containing the second phone he had sealed away, along with copies of every piece of evidence. "I've already sent this to Ryan's wife," Lucas said, his back still to her. Vanessa gasped audibly, the gravity of his words sinking in. "She deserves to know the truth too. I won't be the only one you have to face." "Lucas, please don't do this," Vanessa pleaded, her voice rising. "You're going to destroy everything." Lucas turned to her one last time, his grey eyes cold, unyielding. "No, Vanessa. You already destroyed everything. I'm just cleaning up the pieces." Without another word, he left the house. The sunlight hit him as he stepped onto the driveway, a strange warmth spreading through him. For the first time in weeks, he felt lighter, as though shedding the weight of her betrayal had also freed him of something deeper. As Lucas drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of the home they had once shared. It was no longer his sanctuary, but a shell of what it had been. A place he would leave behind to rebuild something new. "Come with us, mother." He didn't know exactly where his life would take him next, but as he watched the road ahead, he felt a quiet resolve. The truth had set him free, and in its wake, he would find the strength to start again.